In this video, we are going to look at the graph of logarithmic functions. A quick recall, y is equal to log base b of x is the inverse function of y is equal to b to the x. So logarithmic function is the inverse of the exponential function. Therefore, their graphs are symmetric with respect to the line y is equal to x. Example 6, graph y is equal to log base 2 of x. We could try to graph the inverse function, and then we can interchange x and y to graph the log function, because sometimes it is easier to come up with the points in the exponential function. So the inverse function of this is y is equal to base here is 2, and then to the x power. So let's graph this exponential function. We are going to create a table, come up with some x values, and then calculate the y values. Let x be negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. If x is negative 2, then 2 to the negative 2 will give you 1 over 2 squared, which is 1/4. X is equal to negative 1. 2 to the negative 1 is the same as 1 over 2 to the first power, which is 1/2. X is equal to 0. 2 to the 0 is equal to 1. X is equal to 1. 2 to the first power is 2. And x is equal to 2. 2 squared gives you 4. So the order pairs we have here are negative 2, 1/4, negative 1, 1/2, 0, 1, 1, 2, and 2, 4. Let's plot these points. Negative 2, 1/4 would be about here. Negative 1, 1/2, 0, 1, 1, 2, and 2, 4. So this right here is the graph of the function y is equal to 2 to the x power. Now the log function, y is equal to log base 2 of x. All we have to do is reverse x and y. So the order pairs would be 1/4, negative 2. I'm just interchanging x and y here. 1/2, negative 1, 1, 0, 2, 1, and 4, 2. Let's plot these points. 1/4 and negative 2, that would be about here. 1/2, negative 1, that's about here. 1, 0, 2, 1, and 4, 2. Connect these dots. We have this curve here. Now, let's draw that middle line, y is equal to x. And I'm going to make it a dotted line because that's not part of the graph. As you can see, the blue graph and the pink graph, which is the graph of y is equal to log base 2 of x, are symmetric along that line, y is equal to x. So in summary, let's compare the two types of graph. For an exponential function, we'll get this graph if b is greater than 1. As you can see in our example, 2 to the x power has that shape. The logarithmic function would go like this, as you can see it in the example that we just did. Now, if b is between 0 and 1, then the exponential function will go in the opposite direction here. It will look like this. This is for when b is between 0 and 1. And if b is between 0 and 1 for the logarithmic function, then the graph will go in this direction. This is for b is between 0 and 1, and this is for b is greater than 1. So the domain for the exponential function is always negative infinity to positive infinity. And the range for that function, as you can see, it's above the horizontal line, so it never touches the horizontal line because it's not possible for b to the x to equal 0. So the range is from 0 to infinity. The domain for the logarithmic function, as you notice, the graphs I drew here is always on the right side of the y-axis. So the domain is always from 0 to infinity. It never touches the vertical axis. And the range looks like it goes up forever and down forever. So it's negative infinity to infinity. Now this makes sense that since the two functions are inverses of each other, domain of the exponential function is the range of the logarithmic function. And the range of the exponential function is the domain of the logarithmic function. The horizontal asymptote for the exponential function is y is equal to 0, is this horizontal line here. And the logarithmic function actually doesn't have a horizontal asymptote. It has a vertical asymptote instead. That vertical asymptote is x is equal to 0, is this y-axis right here. When b is greater than 1 in the exponential function, that's a blue graph. Notice that we are experiencing an increasing pattern or growth. And the equivalent blue graph in the logarithmic function, as you can see, it also goes up. So it's also experiencing an increase. Now pay attention to the pink graph. That's where b is between 0 and 1. In the exponential function, the graph is decreasing. And the pink graph in the logarithmic function, this one is also decreasing as the pattern goes down from left to right.